it is so important. And I can't tell you enough about how important this is going to be, and encourage your persistence. You will be getting pushbacks, and have been getting pushbacks, I'm sure, from every source, in the sense that the professionals, the others in the community, even other groups. But my point is, the work is so important. If we're going to create better options, if we're going to make the options that are available to our youngsters more effective, it requires activity from families, from the users of our educational services, in a way that reinforces your responsibility. And this is not your privilege, this is part of a parent's responsibility to be the custodian of the services that their kids receive. And that means having the prerogative, using the power to push back, to be able to learn about those best practices, those best options, to be able to demand the answers. And the answers are sometimes very complex. In many ways, you're legitimate in your sense. Explain this to me. I want to know. This is going to be more important over the next 4 years than I have ever experienced in my life. I don't know, to the extent that you have been following the news over the last 4 days, where in the governor's budget, and this might have just been a threat, and I hope it was, but that in order to meet the $2 billion that he expects to save just this year alone, the proposal is to close down the whole of the Connecticut Technical High School system. That's 17 schools that serve as options for youngsters in our districts. And that is not even the most severe of the costs. The things that you will be experiencing at your local level as local communities attempt to deal with the budget. I was listening at Hartford, and there's an anticipation that there might be as many as 123 teachers laid off. And the point was, and you know what? That's the best scenario. So to the extent that we're going to be experiencing situations at the local level over the next 4 years that will severely, severely impact our kids, and particularly the kids who have been traditionally underserved, your activity, your activism at every level of the system is going to be not only tested, but required more than you've ever experienced before. We are very concerned about, I am very concerned about what all of this means. Much of the things that we have worked before to preserve, things like preschool education, the inauguration of full-day kindergarten, to the extent that youngsters get a good start in education in order to not to have the achievement gaps, to be able to mitigate the achievement gaps through creating greater opportunities for young people. All of those things are at peril. And unless families can stand with professionals as a unified front, confronting both government and citizens around the necessity for us to work together and preserve the opportunities for youngsters to continue to be educated and at a very high level, we stand to lose a lot. In our high schools, in our elementary schools, you know, unless we, in most cases, as I look at budgets, many of the things that we had fought for in terms of having a full continuum of curricula, school districts are now looking to see how can I provide only those things that are mandated through the state. And in many cases, I'm getting petitions to see can they get waivers from those things. To the extent that they had used Title I monies in order to hire paraprofessionals and other supports, they are actively seeking other options, both from the feds and from the state, for uses to use that money in order to secure and maintain full-time teachers. So I think that we have a tremendous challenge before us. When I can't say enough about how important your work is, all of you, I can't say enough about how important your work is. But the work is that, the most important part of the work is that we're going to have to form strong coalitions. And I hate to say it, that it might be that in this situation of greatest peril, you might be in a position to extract greater collaboration from professional teachers than you've ever had before, because a lot of what is to be lost will affect them directly. And it might create an opportunity for you to have a more genuine dialogue with them, as I intend to continue to have around preserving those things that are important to us. But I think that one of the things I want to report is that the school governance councils, I think that they are up, they are running. I'm very encouraged by what we see, not so much in terms of just the struggle, the technical things that have been done, but the level of dialogue that I'm understanding is going on in communities, whereby teachers and parents are sitting together, principals are sharing with me that they are putting very, very difficult issues on the table. And I think this is very important. One of the things that I want to just to let you know, and I don't know that all of you are affected by it, but since we last met, the state made a determination that the state would be more actively engaged in some districts. Wyndham is the first. We are going into Wyndham. The state has informed Wyndham, both the board and the superintendent, that the policies that affect the youngsters' development, particularly as it relates to closing the achievement gap and the plan that they had submitted to the State Department of Education, will now have to be approved in a very direct way by a special master that the state is putting into that school district, which represents a team of people that represents the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education in order to affect the learning of those students. This is just the first. This is just the first. The state's determination that schools that have been experiencing persistent failure, that will be interrupted, is real. In petitioning the governor for this role that we are playing or will be playing, the governor's point was, whatever you do, create the capacity such that you will be able to go into multiple districts at the same time. And he was very articulate in determining that there are at least 4 districts, 4 other districts that he expects that we will need to be in before Thanksgiving. And in every one of these situations, there's deterioration between the communities coming together around how to support high-quality education. And it will test us, it will test you, it will test the school districts around the role that the state can play in order to affect this kind of change. And I think that we're all going to be tested. It would be a hard job to do this, even when we had access to what has sometimes been regarded as an unlimited budget. When we're going in now, with the resources of government challenged, but having to make essential policy and programmatic changes with the expectation that youngsters will be doing better and that the systems will be more responsive to their learning. That challenge is great. The thing that we know from the department that gives me the confidence that I have is that the state can't fail. We've seen failure at the school level, we've seen failure at the district level. The community, the state has appealed to the state to do something that changes the situation. And I want you to know that the governor's office, through the legislature, through the commissioner's office, we are determined that there will be changes, and there will be changes in the system in ways that you probably have not seen in our schools in the last 100 years. And there will changes that affect a lot of people, everybody who are responsible and participate in education, from parents to students to the professionals who are there.
I just have one question. So because we're looking at such drastic change, and we know we're about to lose teachers, and I understand, and again, I'm still learning about unions and collective bargaining, but what I'm trying to understand, how can we work with the State Department of Education to ensure that the right teachers in the country, you understand? So you have to make tough choices. So if you have A teacher and B teacher, one's been here this long, one's been here, I don't want it to it just cannot be how long someone has been there, because if we have whole schools that aren't reading that grade, then we're going to need that best teacher who understands reading. So it's not personal.
Yeah.
So how are we going to address that? Because I know the legislative session this year has tabled those conversations. But if we're looking at changes so drastic, that means we have to make very deliberate choices in who stays in the classroom, who does not. So again, without it being us against them or not, how are we going to address that then?
Well, I think there are two things. This fall, the State Department of Education will be delivering to districts, as is required by the legislature, guidelines on teacher evaluation. And we will be expecting that those guidelines be fully implemented. And in those guidelines, superintendents will have to create objective measures by which teachers are evaluated, and include student performance as a part of that evaluation. So to the extent that we can say, well, what is a good teacher and what is a lesser performing teacher, there are lots of objective things and subjective things that fall within that. In some cases, we have to discern, well, what do we expect of the performance? What's the difference in performance that we might expect of a 25-year teacher and a novice teacher? And particularly when we're looking at all those things, and these are some of the difficulties that you have to discern. The question is, how does the school use that expertise such that the 25-year-old veteran that has the greatest repertoire of competencies in order to affect student learning, that those individuals are paired with the youngsters who have the greatest amount of need. Those are the kinds of things that I think that families are going to have to monitor with schools. But more than that, I think that we're going to have to create the relationship whereby families feel free both to give feedback to the system, to the school system, but also create the relationship with teachers, not so that teachers feel threatened, but that they know that you are part of a system of accountability, so that we have that kind of ongoing dialogue. And I think that's the next thing that we need to do, is to spend more resources, spend more time facilitating those high-quality dialogues between parents and teachers, so that one, parents will know that their input to the teacher is valuable, but teachers can grow comfortable knowing that parents and their perceptions and the performance of their children are part of the accountability system in the end as well. So I think that this is going to be a very touchy one. Nationally, we know it's touchy as well. The people in the US DOE, they don't have the answers to this. The thing that we know is that we cannot allow a system whereby almost 95% of the teachers in our schools are regarded as being excellent or superior teachers when so many youngsters are failing. So this is the connection that we have to make, and I'm not optimistic from the beginning, but I think this is a system that we're going to have to work through and perfect as we go along. It is one that everybody is concerned about in terms of the resources that it will likely tie up in the system around legal fees. Because like the unions, individual teachers, based upon their perception of their performance, based upon the system's expertise in terms of doing evaluations that allow them to make discerning decisions that affect individuals' livelihood, it has to be fairly impeccable. And one of the things that we don't want to do is to sacrifice great amounts of resources that could be going to students now to be going to the legal community, whereby the benefits are generally nominal. Yes?
Could I just say, I've been in Wyndham, working in Wyndham for 23 years now, and I think that there is a great need for reform in Wyndham, but I'm wondering also what kind of resources are going to go into mitigating the effects of poverty. I know that the schools really need support, but I think the risks that happen because families live in poverty and the stress that poverty brings on families has such an impact on kids' ability to learn.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't want to dismiss that, but many of us have come from situations where there were real needs, and that's not to discount poverty. Poverty does have an impact, but we have become the prevalence of youngsters who are school dependent, who depend upon the school to make the difference in their lives, have become so great that we must have a strategy that allows them an element of comfort, security, and the opportunity to achieve, even in spite of all those other things that are dissonant in their lives. Because
But I'm
unless
talking about the families who need support as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking about, so we want families getting families into schools, but some of them can't even get the kids out to the bus.
Well, you know, and where the family can't get the kid out to the bus, that might be a part of some other surrogate to do that. The important thing is that the youngster needs to get to school.
Absolutely.
I can't promise that I can rehabilitate families. I can't promise a whole lot of things beyond what I put control, but I do know that we can create schools that will operate longer hours, that are more sensitive to the developmental needs of youngsters at every level, including adolescents, in a way that leads them to know that if they persist in that environment, they will have options that allow them to move on towards being independent and hopefully successful in whatever might happen beyond that. I just believe that it's too, I don't want to say it's too easy, but the situation is so dire that we can look at deteriorating communities, we can look at stressful families, and we could just surrender to say the situation is too big.
No.
And I guess my point is, as much as I am sympathetic to it all, I believe that there is something, I know that there are characteristics that high quality engagement with sensitive people for the numbers of hours that youngsters are in a caring school can make all the difference in that youngster's life. Even when we know that youngster might have to leave and go back to something that is less gratifying for them, but that they would look forward to coming there and getting what we offer during those times that we offer. So things like full year-round schooling, longer school days, different types of training for teachers, support for parents' engagement, not just parents' engagement, but parent knowledge about the school system and parent knowledge about parenting and how their actions can affect youngsters. All of these are things that we can do, and I'm looking forward to all of these things being a part of certainly our engagement with these communities, but also generalized in a way that allows every family across the state where they might not be one of these communities we're engaged in to benefit from the knowledge. Yes.
One more question, and I
Thank
promised
you.
Charlene I was going to get you out of here.
Thank you.
You're not gonna get back.
Teacher evaluation, stretching out the school day. How does all of that, when you bring that to the table, and you're looking at collective bargaining agreements, you're looking at I know in Connecticut there are a lot of aspects of collective bargaining agreements that are actually in, they're legislated, they're in the law, you can look it up. So how does that discussion happen, and how do those changes happen? Because if something is, it's illegal, then there has to be some sort of change in the laws before you can even begin to see a longer school day, or you talked about teacher evaluation. This is huge, but at the end of the day, with last in, first out, how do you make those changes happen? How is the Department of Education looking to make those changes?
Well, we certainly are aware of the challenges that are associated with those changes. A part of why my whole system, our whole technical school system, is threatened to close down is because I understand, I would suspect that strong tactics that are associated with policy, whereby, well, are you really willing to see your whole system close down for the relatively small element of dispute that you have between the government? And these are the kinds of things that will force some change. Because remember, in Connecticut, we don't bargain. We don't collectively bargain statewide. Every community, 169 towns, collectively bargain their teacher contracts. There are some things that we do at the state, and we're beginning to see, whereby some of the labor laws are being relaxed or reconsidered in a way that allows a greater amount of that allows change to happen more rapidly. I want to say the point here is not to make teachers the victims. One, I think that good teachers and the profession as a whole, the things that they have collectively bargained for are things that most workers should seek to have. The point is, given this time that we're in, what are the sacrifices that we can all make in order to make sure the thing that brought us to the profession from the start, that's meaning the opportunity to educate our youngsters, that can continue. And I think that as teachers, given the political force that they are, they will it's not going to all happen in 1 year, but I think over the next 4 years you will see a new environment, both because of the federal engagement in terms of creating new options in education generally, things like charter schools, schools that can procure waivers for various things that had been bargained in a regular school system. As more of those opportunities proliferate, and we're beginning to see some promise in a great number of those practices will be observed and be generalized within the system, so that the stranglehold that the traditional system have had on education is beginning to be fractured, and it's creating opportunities for fresh light to be shown on new options. Not to say that the old things were bad, they are just not delivering the promise that they had traditionally. And it's not because people aren't working as hard at it as they used to. I think in many cases we do have new challenges in our system, certainly students who are bringing greater amounts of challenges to the system that it is incumbent upon professionals to be prepared to address. One of the things in Wyndham that I found particularly egregious is not because teachers were at fault, but because the student population had changed from about 10% of English language learners to now 60% English language learners in about 10 years. Many of the teachers did not have both the cultural awareness or the linguistic capability in order to be as effective instructional leaders as those youngsters needed. So the point gets to be, how do we as a state begin to make those transitions? I mean, we will continue to have diversity, and it won't be all Latina over time. And as professionals, we have to find ways that require professionals to share the language learning burden so that youngsters won't be comfortably handicapped by that disposition.
Okay, now I have to get you out of here. So, or Charlene, call me.
I just want to say thank you to our visitors for coming and sharing this day with us. You know, when you come to a state like Connecticut, where we have played such a role in terms of leadership, national leadership, and we are now challenged by as other states are, by the things that you will hear today, we appreciate your spending this time and adding your expertise to the cadre of knowledge that we will need as we truly seek new ways to approach the problems that are confronting us. So I hope that you'll be generous with what you know, and that as we follow up with you, that you will be willing to play that role in commenting on those things that we might put forward to you and seek your advice. So thank you all. I appreciate it. I hope you have a successful conference, and I regret that I can't stay longer.
That is fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.